Have you guys ever seen the game between Botvinnik and Tal, the World Championship match where Tal deployed an unbelievable sacrifice line against the Caro-Kann? It's not well known, so I hope you haven't seen it. Maybe you have, if you study a lot of chess or read a lot of books, but it's quite fascinating. From me looking at that match, that game, I got this beauty, this gem against a 2700 today. I'm going to look over a bunch of the lines. I can make a follow-up video of the core ideas in the middle game if you guys would like that. And let's get into it. By the way, today I drew Nigel Short, the Nigel Short on chess.com, which is unbelievable. So I'm going to make a video on that tomorrow. Not going to let that game go to waste. This is a Caro-Kann video, d4, d5, knight to d2. You can also play it on knight to c3 because 9 times out of 10 they take on e4 and it transposes. On the off chance that they don't, I like these tirage systems where my pawn can go to c3. So that's the major difference on that 1 out of 10 times. Now, many people go knight f6, the Tartakower. This has raised in popularity exponentially, honestly. But bishop to f5 is the main line. It used to be. I believe it still is. Don't quote me on that. But you guys have all seen it before. Here, you gain a tempo on the bishop with knight to g3. It retreats, and you try to trap the bishop with h5. You might be like, what is this guy talking about? I see this all the time. Not so fast. Next move will change everything. Now, if you are playing a club level person, they might mess up with pawn to h5. It's just good to know that you route your knight over to e5 like so, and it's not easy for them to defend this pawn on h5. So that's why pawn h5 is an inaccuracy for black. Pawn h6 is the typical move. Now you guys have probably been familiar with knight to f3, pawn to h5, kicking out the bishop. You go for the bishop trade, castle queenside, yada yada. But this is none of that. This is Mikhail Tal's line. I actually need to look up the name of the line. But knight to e2. The point is that you do not need to overextend your h-pawn. So in the middle game, end game, it will not become a liability. Rather, you're going to kick the light squared bishop out with the knight. So it goes to h7. And on top of that, you don't need to trade light squared bishops. Why trade if there's no reason to trade? So bishop to c4, you're aiming in on e6. Can you guess which square you're going to sacrifice on? Sometimes you sack with the bishop, sometimes the knight. I'll show both. So in this position, what should black do? My opponent went bishop to d6, which actually just loses on the spot. What you should do is go knight to f6. So on knight to f6, you see the queen is cut off to the pawn. So you would just castle. And here they should go bishop to d6. If they go bishop to e7, it's actually a rare case where you sack the bishop. And like so, you're going to win 3 pawns just like that. But bishop to d6 is the main move. After bishop to d6, since you're castled, you're able to take the pawn on e6. What does white get from this? Have you ever seen this? White gets 2 pawns for the knight, and black's king is quite paralyzed, which is good for you. Now, if they go knight d7, which is the best move, and queen c7, trying to castle queenside, no shot. Bishop to g8, discovered check. Already, if the king moves to d8, it's equal. If the king moves to f8 and they play the next 50 moves perfectly, it's a minus 0.8 position, so I hope you can live with that. So king to f8 is the best move. You snag the bishop, and since the bishop no longer covers f5, you're able to jump the knight into this position. Middle game ideas are pawn c4, queen f3. Sometimes there's sacrifices on h6. I'll make a follow-up video for the strategy of the line if you want. Comment down below if you want that or don't, and it won't happen. Knight to f5 though, and you're aiming at everything. You have 2 pawns for the knight. I believe the Tal-Botvinnik match went h6. We got bishop takes. You have 3 pawns for the knight now, and you have a bishop. Tal only messed up that game because he doubled up a set of his pawns, and then the 3 pawns weren't really 3 pawns, especially against the knight pair. But nonetheless, still a beautiful line. Still made me get this game. Isn't that crazy to think about? You look over one famous game from the past, and then you can play like a beast. You can scrub stomp a 2700 just like that. It's really incredible. Okay, but my opponent did not go knight f6. He went bishop to d6. Bishop to d6 aims at these knights. Yes, it does. But you should not castle because the queen will then snag the pawn on h4. So find the refutation to bishop d6. Pause the video. Try to find it. Knight g h5. Did you find it? The point is, it's very hard for black to play this position. Like, say he goes g6, you just jump the knight in. Maybe he'll blunder a queen, like so. pretty amazing. That could happen. If he goes king to e7, it's not so much better. You're basically committed to sacrificing, and the king is just never where it wants to be. And when your king is not where you want it to be, it's pretty hard not to lose. So what else could they do? Most of my opponents take this knight, you take back, and then they need to deal with the problem. Again, if king f8, well, not again. This time you're going queen g4, aiming at this guy. It's not so easy for them to play. If g6, bishop here would win the game, right? Because pawn takes, bishop, that's a queen. Queen check, and you win the rook. And if pawn f6, building the wall, it's not such a sturdy wall because you just checkmate them. If they go queen e7, you go bishop d6, and then you checkmate them. Now, what did my opponent do? My opponent took, and then knight f6. Not the greatest. Find white's next move. Knight takes g7. We get king to f8, and now bishop takes h6, and there is a discovery in the midst. What do you do when you're losing? You give spite checks. Don't give spite checks. They're one-move threats. It gives me a pawn chain that I'm very happy with, and life is pretty good. We got bishop to g6, okay, a discovery on my bishop. Now here, there's two best moves. Well, there's one best move. I'm just coping. I chose the second best. I can speak, the second best move. The discovery would be good. King g8, bishop g7, and if he takes the knight, you would take, and life is, again, life's good sometimes. Just is. Most times. Queen to f3, you aim at the knight, they take, and if the knight moves somewhere, say d7, you just have knight takes e6, and their f-pawn is pinned. And it's a double check. Quick math. So, they take the bishop, you take the knight, they develop. There's only one winning move here. What is it? Not so hard. Knight takes e6. If king g8, that is a mate in one. If king e8, I really like this move. Queen to f4. The point is, this is like a pat on the back move. When you're winning, but you convert. It aims at c7 with the fork. It aims at h6. So he takes the knight. I take the rook. He goes queen to f5. This might be the only time you ever hear this in a chess video. Find the only losing move. Castles queenside. Mate in one. Never too late to lose a chess game. Luckily, I didn't do that. I kicked the bishop out. He gave another spite check. Queen to e3, and he resigns. Because you're just up a rook at the end of the day. Either he's going to, take this. You could just take on e6. Castle queenside. Boom, boom, boom. Bam, bam, bam. You win. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. I can make a video on everything and anything regarding this. I can show the Tal Botvinnik game. Tomorrow's video, though, is going to be Nigel Short, the draw I had him. I played the King's Gambit, which is unbelievable. My speech is going all over the place. But also, thank you guys for I got like 25 subs on my endgame video. I was like, no one likes endgames. This is going to get no views, but I like endgames. Maybe it was because it was the first video in a while. I didn't make a rude comment. But to the new subs, we'll get there. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Have a great day. Boom.